This is Jermaine reporting for the Pound for Pound Boxing Show. I'm joined by the Goldenboy promoter and matchmaker, Roberto Diaz. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Jermaine. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
No, thanks you for taking time to talk to me. I've been a fan of your work for a long, long time now, and it's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
Roberto, obviously there's been some fantastic previously fights from Goldenboy and up-and-coming fights with Goldenboy. But I want to ask you, how did you first get into boxing? How did your boxing journey first begin?
Well, it's a very crazy movie-like story. I met one of my idols in a shopping mall in San Diego, California, many years ago, Marco Antonio Barrera. And as a fan, as a normal fan, I approached him for, an autograph, and we became very good friends. I mean, to this day, 20 years later, I'm godfather to his oldest, and we've maintained a relationship through the years, like family. That was my introduction really to boxing in the workplace, because obviously as a fan, I grew up because of my father loving boxing. I mean, that was my number one sport. I would fantasize fights like many fans do. These are the fights that should be. I would write a list of let's say, all the fights that were coming up in the calendar and put my prediction, round, winner, everything. And that was just, I mean, I love boxing. I had jobs where if they wouldn't give me the days off, my bosses knew that I would quit when it was coming time to watch Julio Cesar Chavez fights. He knew that I was going to take the weekend off. I was going to go to the fights, and I better get the vacation, the time off, otherwise I'd quit. And he told me, that's how serious you have it. I said, look, it's boxing. Eddie Reynoso came up with an amazing slogan on it: no boxing, no life. Even many years before that, that was the attitude that I had. So obviously through the years of working with Barrera, I met the people at Goldenboy, worked alongside with them during Barrera's career, and then eventually was offered an opportunity to work for Goldenboy, signing new talent and matching up the fighters. It was a tough decision. I mean, it was a no-brainer, but it was still a tough decision because I didn't know what was expected. I didn't know, Goldenboy was obviously growing, but it was a big company, and it was like, okay, what if it doesn't work out? But I've always been somewhat of a gambler and rolled the dice. And even when Barrera asked me to work with him, my first reaction could have been, no, what if I ruined this man's career? I mean, he's definitely was already a multiple weight division champion. He was on his way to the Hall of Fame. I could have easily ruined the career of a legendary fighter. But even though I had never done what he asked me to, I said, yeah, absolutely. I will take on the challenge. And that's a strong message to everybody that listens is, if you do things with a passion, what's the worst thing that could happen? You could slip, you could fall, but get up and keep going and learn from that mistake so it doesn't happen again. And you'd be surprised at how much you can accomplish when you're doing it with 100% focus and 100% looking out for what you're doing and learning, and not going with an attitude that I know everything, walking in, learning, talking and asking questions and not being afraid. And that got me to where I'm at. I mean, I've been almost 14 years at Goldenboy, worked alongside some of the greatest athletes that ever stepped into a ring. You name them, we worked with them. I mean, Bernard Hopkins, Sugar Shane Mosley, Marquez, Morales, Barrera, obviously my boss now, Oscar De La Hoya, Canelo Alvarez, and then some of the young youth of the later generation, like the Abner Mares and Leo Santa Cruz and Danny Garcias and Errol Spence, Deontay Wilder. Some of those young, still champions today, grew up and came up through Goldenboy Promotions at one time. So it makes me proud. I mean, it sounds like not a long time, 14 years, but when you were doing 3 to 4 shows a month, 1 year is you do so many shows. You learn fast. Each show has 8 or 10 fights, so it's on a quick pace. So it's almost like a sink or swim. You're gonna find out soon. And I did find out the first couple shows. I almost turned in my resignation because it was like not what I expected. But you grow another layer of skin. You get through that fire, and you come out on the other side, and you feel proud of yourself because you said, "This, I can do this. I can do this." And the toughest parts when fights fall apart or fall out, and to go to the fighter and say, "You're not fighting today," because all the sacrifices they do. Stay away from family, diet, cut weight, train every day, spar, get hurt, sometimes go to bed with a headache. But they keep going through. So you learn from the fighter that if they can go through that, they should be your role model if you can go through it. Because life is a boxing. It's a fight. Life is a fight. Sometimes you're going to have bad days. Sometimes you're going to have good days. Sometimes you're going to get knocked down. You got to get up, continue. At the end of the day, your hand has to be raised. So you learn that from these tremendous athletes, these champions, and you get that attitude that, okay, let's keep going and move on. And it's only going to get better. And it's been great. It's been great.
Yeah, that's absolutely inspirational. That's amazing to hear. Obviously, for boxing fans, young like myself, to hear that sort of story of how it first started, and just the fact that you took risks to get the rewards. This gives me motivation, and not just me motivation. Anyone listening who's got a passion for boxing, gives anyone that sort of motivation to take risks.
Absolutely. I mean, life is about risks. Boxing's about risks. Those great champions that we idolize, that we look up to, that we follow, most of them took risks, and those risks paid off. And if they don't, you learn from that loss, defeat, or learning experience, as Canelo called it when the Mayweather fight. He doesn't call it a loss. He calls it a learning experience, because you can only better yourself from those mistakes.
100%. And look at him now. Absolutely fantastic fighter. Absolutely, it's amazing to watch. I love watching him every time. Just the way kind of the world sits still when he fights. The boxing world sits still and pays homage to him by watching these fights every single time he performs. So yeah, he's an absolute great champion as well. I want to ask you, obviously, just talk a bit about past fights that happened recently and the future fights coming up with Goldenboy, because Goldenboy has put on some great shows. I want to talk a bit about Gilberto Ramirez, his recent fight with Barrera, fantastic fight. You also had Estrada. She won the world title as well. You had Joe Diaz for Fortuna. That for me was a fantastic fight. I stayed up over here in the UK and watched that fight on DAZN. Great fight. How did you enjoy this fight? Which fight did you most enjoy out of all the fights I've mentioned?
I was very excited going into that card. Number one, because it was our first fight back since the pandemic at home. We were in a stadium, beautiful stadium, Bank of California, where the LAFC plays. It was so exciting to be back home and to give the fans that were coming out something special. We had 12 fights that night. We started very early. Staff was there like at 9 in the morning, receiving the first group of fighters that arrived at 10 in the morning. First fight started at noon. And I was there from the first fight on. It was exciting because that day, I don't know. I mean, for us to look good as matchmakers, it's all about the fighters putting it together inside the ring. Mm-hmm. So that day was special because every fighter came in there with something in that energized them, that they put everything into it. There was an 8-rounder with Mihai Nistor, a heavyweight, went 2 rounds, but there was 4 knockdowns in those 2 rounds, 2 apiece. Yeah. Mihai was cut bad, bloodied everywhere, almost knocked out. Yeah. And he got up and you could see it. They told him in the corner, go to the body. He said, no, I'm going for the top. I'm going for the knockout. And he charged his opponent and knocked him out in 2 rounds, 4 knockdowns. That was very exciting. Yeah. James Wilkins with Chevalier, that had back and forth. There was one point where there was an uppercut by Brian Chevalier that knocked out Wilkins, froze him, You could see he was knocked out. And then seconds later, he hurts Cavalier and almost has him out.
Yeah.
That went back and forth. Personally, I thought that should have been a draw. It was for a vacant NABO title. Sulem Urbina fought for a world title against the most decorated Japanese fighter, a female fighter in Japan, and it was a very good fight. Unfortunately, one of the scorecards didn't. If you read the scorecard without watching the fight, you think, but it didn't justify what we saw in the fight. I thought Sulem also could have scored a draw at worst, if not won the world title. But she put on a great effort. And then going into the zone card, we had 2 undefeated Goldenboy fighters opening up the show with William Cepeda against Hector Tanahara Jr. You had a 19-0 against 22-0, and it's not done. Not done in these current times where managers, trainers, or promoters want to risk that. And to me, that's the beauty of boxing, when the fan can't pick who they think is going to win because it's such a good and even fight. And Cepeda, has just gained a new fan base in America. There's only a second fight in the U.S., and people were talking about him after the show like there's a star born because of the amount of punches he throws. And with his win over a Tanahara Jr., who's so decorated in the amateurs and highly rated in the pros, it rose his stock. And why I like these type of fights is, again, I mentioned it's not a loss. It's a learning experience. Hector is young to come back and learn from this and only get better. It's different when you're in your 30s and you got to risk it all or take care of it until the big fight comes. So at this point in their career, it showed that both teams believed, both teams came to win, and it's for good of boxing because the fans enjoyed it. Going into Senicia Estrada, who every fight now we want to be fighting for different belts. I mean, it's only about, yes, there's going to be a point where she's going to have to defend her title, but she wants unification. She wants to win other divisions. She wants to, and they're all going to be tough fights, and she's born for that. I mean, every fight, she shows something different. She can adjust. She can change. In the middle of the fight, she makes changes. She is a very complete fighter. I've talked to her, her dad, her team, trainer, everybody, and our goal is she will be pound for pound the #1 fighter in female boxing. I truly believe it. She's going to win more. She's already won interim title at 112, 105, 108. Now we want to start unifying. It's just very fun, very exciting to watch her fight because how she does things. She sets up traps. She changes up speeds. She'll change, her stance. I mean, she could do it all. She could do it all. And then obviously going into JoJo and the Fortuna fight, Fortuna was very avoided, hadn't fought in a while because nobody wanted to fight him. And it was very, not surprising, but I was happily, because we've debuted JoJo. JoJo didn't have a shortcut to the world title. He had, in his buildup, fought every style out there. Getting him, preparing him, fought southpaws, fought tall, langy, rangy boxers, punchers, of every style to prepare him for that world title fight. And now at this level, when he raised his hand and said, "Hey, I'll fight Fortuna," and I said, at 135, I said, "JoJo, you could make 130. Last time was just, the mistakes here and there, but you can make," he says, "I know I can make 130, but I'll fight Fortuna." And the reason when he raised his hand and said, "I'll fight Fortuna," I was comfortable with it because I said, you know what? You're fighting Fortuna at lightweight, which is not your natural weight, but it's not Fortuna's natural weight either. He's coming up just like you did to lightweight. Height-wise, reach-wise, there's not a huge advantage. Fortuna's going to come at you. JoJo's a very good counter puncher, closed, tight defense in the pocket. Okay, I like it. Let's do it. And I remember telling a couple of reporters and people that asked me before, "Hey, does JoJo have a chance?" I said, you will see a dog in the trenches tonight. Those were my words before the fight.
Yeah.
Nobody's really seen the dog come out of Jojo because he hasn't needed to. Fortuna's going to bring out a dog, and people are going to be surprised that Jojo has that dog inside of him. And sure enough, even with the cut, Jojo showed, and then when it came down to dig deep, he showed it and came up, on top. And now there's some big opportunities out there for him, and I'm very proud. Even though it's not his division, he could drop down to 130. If the bigger fights are at 35 and he wants them, let's go get him, Jojo.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And then, of course, Zurdo Ramirez, making his Goldenboy debut. I've heard some comments, Barrera was done, but let's remember Zurdo had been off pretty much for 2 years. He had one fight in Mexico not too long ago, but Barrera was an opponent with a lot of experience that's gone the distance with several of the best in the division, and it was a good fight that was supposed to give us rounds for Zurdo after being off so long. Didn't expect a quick knockout because Barrera can box. Barrera has enough experience to stay away and box and move and pose problems. But Zurdo wanted to make a statement, and he did. Gilberto Ramirez went in there with a killer instinct to knock out Barrera and did it, and now says, hey, all you light heavyweights, I'm going to come after and get all your belts. So it was a great night. I've heard a lot of comments from the fans and people that watched it from top to bottom. A lot of excitement, we want to keep doing that. We want to keep doing that with the next show and give those fans.
Roberto, are you still there? So bear with us 1 second. Hopefully we get Roberto back.
I'm here.
You still there? Yeah. Sorry, lost you for a bit there.
Yeah, somebody tried ringing. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
So yeah, that's what we want to continue doing. Not just give the fans that main event or that co-main event, but from start to finish, a full great night of fights.
Yeah. It's a fantastic show. I really enjoyed it. Not later back I will talk to you a bit about the future for Gilberto Ramirez and Jojo Diaz. Obviously, they've been straight after the fight, Gilberto Ramirez says he wants to maybe fight Joe Smith Jr. Can you see that fight happening anytime soon?
I could if both. I mean, obviously, if the other side wants it, I could. If Gilberto wants it, I see that as a very good fight for the fans. Joe Smith, he could fight. He's shown it, and it would be great because guess what? He's the man that retired Bernard Hopkins. So there's some history there, and now Gilberto could come back and avenge that for Goldenboy and for Bernard. So I could see it if the other side wants it. If Joe Smith and his promotional team want it, then it could be possibly done. No doubt about it. He does want to fight Dimitri Bivol, which is probably the best fighter in the division and the best champion and the most dangerous. I'd like to see one more fight if possible. And, just to get Gilberto, get some rounds and get that distance and get that preparation for somebody like Bivol. But he wants titles, he wants belts, he wants to be the unified world champion at 175, and we have to support him on that.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Another, obviously, Jojo Diaz has come out on Twitter. Him and Devin Haney have been going back and forth on Twitter, saying they would like to fight each other. Could you ever see that fight materializing between them two?
I could. Well, this is a fight that he's now the interim champion. Devin's the lightweight champion at the WBC. They might have to fight each other if it's ordered by the WBC. So I can see that fight happening. It's a fight Jojo wants. It's a fight we've seen, obviously, Devin want. Again, Devin just had a win over Jorge Linares. So it would be like, all right, Jojo, let's go get that title back. Let's go get that title back, the full title, because he is the interim champion. There's also great possibilities in Jojo fighting Ryan Garcia, both at Goldenboy, both the zone fighters, so it could be easily made there as well. I mean, there's so many opportunities right now. We just want him to heal from his cut, and we'll be sitting down with him and his team to decide, what's the next step. But obviously, winning this fight with Fortuna was very important for Jojo's career, because now it's, let's go find the biggest fight out there for you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to putting him back in the ring. I'm a big fan. Always watching the show. One fight you just mentioned just a minute ago was Ryan Garcia, very, very talented butt fighter. Start of the year, a fantastic win over Luke Campbell in January. Obviously, he's been out of the ring, obviously, due to personal issues. Is any information when he might be making his return to the ring?
I'm very excited to say he's back in training, back in the gym. Even through his personal issues, Ryan's not a young man that will gain a lot of weight or will, totally abandon being in shape. So I think for him, it's going to be very easy to get back into his momentum. He's a young man that really wants big things. He has a great trainer with Eddie Reynoso behind him, teaching him new things, and his father, Henry. So I do believe that before the end of the year, we'll be seeing Ryan Garcia right back in the ring and continuing his conquest of the division.
That's fantastic news, Joe. I'm sure the whole boxing world is happy to hear you say that, because obviously such a talented fighter like that, we want to see him out there doing what he does best, and that's performing. And that's fantastic news to hear.
Absolutely.
I want to talk to you a bit about another fighter. He's going to be fighting over here in the UK against one of our fighters, and that is Kanju. He's going to be fighting Lee Woods. This fight was a bit of a shock to British fans, because we never saw that coming. So how did this fight materialize?
Look, Shukan, I mean, he's a world champion, and there's the proof. He's not just defending. He could be defending at home in China only, but he's fought in the U.S. He's fought at home. Obviously, through the pandemic, I was working with Eddie to do a big fight. He was ready to go to the UK to fight Josh Warrington. We know what happened. That fight didn't happen. But now, if Josh can win the rematch with Lara, then it's a fight that we can get done, if everything works out against Wood. It's not an easy fight, but I'm very confident in his ability. I mean, to beat this young man, his opponent's going to have to be able to outwork him, and it's easier said than done. Shukan, as everybody knows, and here's the thing that I say, with all due respect, and that's why I love the British fans, is they are very passionate. They'll support their own, but they'll also admire and respect the winner. And I've seen it many, many times. I saw it with Randy Caballero. I saw it with Jorge Linares several times. Recently with Ricardo Sandoval. When it's a fair win, they will show respect and love as well. And I believe after that fight, Shukan will have now a lot of British fans. And that'll only make the fight with Warrington, should that happen, even much bigger. And obviously, first things first is Lee Wood, and he has to perform there. But I'm very, very, very confident in Shukan.
Yeah, that's a fantastic fight. Like I said, we never thought it would happen. It was really a surprise over here. When I found out that fight was happening, I was like, wow, fantastic fight. Obviously, Lee Woods is a very good fighter over here. He's on a good winning streak. And obviously, Shukan, top fighter. And it's going to be a great show. I'm surprised that he's come over here to fight in the UK. So I'll give him a lot of I admire him for coming over here and fighting in the UK, because for him to come over here and defend his world titles is something special.
Well, I got to say too that something that does benefit us on this side of going over there is I'm going to have a massive 20,000 Brits against us on this show. So that helps. Right now we saw it with Ricardo Sandoval out there in, we're Bolton.
Bolton, yeah.
Bolton. Unfortunately, for the promotion, there wasn't a live, a huge gate, a huge entrance, because of current conditions with the COVID. There was only 150 fans allowed. So that helps when you are negotiating and deciding, should we go or should we not? That takes away a big advantage to the home fighter against that visiting fighter, because when you go into, I mean, and we did it with Linares 3 times, and you go into that arena and you hear boos and then you hear all the love and support, it could affect some of these fighters. You know, it doesn't affect some, but it could affect others. And right now, reducing that number is beneficial, because it's almost like, okay, once we're in the ring, I tune out of where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's an advantage for your fighter come over here, and it's disadvantage for the fighter over here. Obviously, you have the full capacity crowd behind him, and we've seen it recently with Josh Warrington when Lara came over here. There was no Leeds fans, no Headingley fans there to get behind Josh Warrington, and unfortunately, he lost the fight. So it could be a blessing in disguise for not having fans over here in the UK for you guys.
Correct.
Yeah. I want to talk a bit about another fighter who's going to be fighting very soon. I'm a big fan of his, and that's Virgil Ortiz. Very, very terrific fighter. Brilliant knockout artist as well. He's blowing people away recently. Obviously, he's going to be fighting soon. How much are you looking forward to seeing him fight?
Oh, I'm very excited. Again, this is our next card out here in Texas. It'll be August 14th in Frisco, Texas. I'm very excited. It's a very tough fight. It's a very dangerous fight. But again, once again, it shows the type of fights we want to give the fans. We want to give the fans dangerous fights, 50-50 fights. And that's also fights that continue building these young men. And these are fighters that, you know what, I'm not saying they're going with the mentality of win or lose or draw. No, they're going in with a mentality of winning, but they're not letting their career be defined by a defeat or worried about keeping the pretty record or the zero. They just want to fight the best out there, because they know from history, from the greats, that to be the best, you have to beat the best. And that's Virgil's attitude. He's not ducking anybody. He wants them all. And this is proof. I mean, Mean Machine, his only loss was to Terrence Crawford. So this will show exactly where Virgil, his progress and everything is. It's a very dangerous fight. It's a very good fight, but we have all the confidence in the world that Virgil is that good and only getting better in every fight.
Yeah, terrific fighter. Oh, it's his fight over against Morris Hooker as well. That's a fantastic fight there. And I can't wait to see him fight on that card. It's going to be a fantastic card yet again. A fight over here in the UK who's mentioned, maybe if he wins his fight and Virgil wins his fight, the fight what maybe could happen one day down the line is Conor Benn versus Virgil Ortiz. Would you ever rule that fight out potentially taking place one day?
Not at all. Not at all. I'm a big fan of Conor Benn. I mean, he's as well as Virgil, getting the knockouts, getting better in every fight. Obviously, it's in his blood, coming from one of the best fighters that ever came out of Britain, one of the best champions, one of the most exciting. I mean, it's a natural fight. As long as they continue winning, why not?
Yeah, that would be some fight. Like I said, 2 very powerful punches, good knockout records on their resumes. That would be a fantastic fight if it does happen. Obviously, if it does happen in the UK or it does happen in the stateside, it will be a great fight to watch for all boxing fans.
Absolutely.
Another fight that's going to be taking place is Franco v Moloney, the third fight. Terrific fights. The last fight was a bit controversial, but now we've got this date now, August 14th. The third fight will take place. How much are you looking forward to finally settling the score in this fight between the 2 fighters?
You know, it's very funny, because for a fighter like Joshua Franco, who's so young, and if you look at how many fights, this is already his second trilogy. You know, Oscar Negrete, which 30 rounds of Oscar Negrete prepared him for that world title opportunity and win. He showed so much in that win. I think in the second fight, we didn't get to see the fight. It had just got started when it ended. This third fight for both fighters is the most important fight of their career, because obviously it makes or break. I think both of them have known each other now. They're going to come out. There's no going to be feel out round. They're going to get started right where they finished off. There's a lot to prove from both sides, but I'm very confident we'll see more of fight number one than fight number two. And when the end of the fight is over, this time I think Joshua Franco will stop Moloney, with all due respect, because Moloney is a very tough former world champion. But Joshua, it has more tricks up his sleeve. He can box, he can punch, he can counter punch, he can be the aggressor. He learned a lot. And this time, I think, without any doubt in my mind, it'll be the third and final to this chapter, to this trilogy.
Brilliant. I can't wait. Another fantastic fight, as always. And boxing fans over here in the UK and in the States can't wait for that fight. It's going to be a great one. Also, I want to talk to you about happening that night is another one of your fighters, female super middleweight champion, and that's Franco Cruz. Obviously, she's fighting as well. How much are you looking forward to seeing her fight and potentially win a fight?
Well, I was looking forward to her fighting a couple weeks back because she's fighting for all the belts, which is very rare and right now in the world of women's boxing. But if you see with her amount of fights, she's already unified. She has 2 belts. She's fighting the other unified champion for her 2 belts. That's going to be a very fun, exciting, crowd-pleasing, and more importantly, for all the belts, and it'll show who's the best in the division. Yeah,
another great historic night for women's boxing. Obviously, history is going to be made that night as well. So, it's going to be a great fight, and I'm looking forward to that fight as well. And it's, like I said, I'm a big advocate for women's boxing at the moment. It's on the rise and it's booming over here in the UK and in the States. So I'm looking forward to this fight.
Absolutely. I think now we're seeing more and more competition, better fights, equal fights. It's on the rise. We've been pushing at Goldenboy almost on every card, a women's fight, a title fight, an important fight. And I'm very proud. I'm very proud because, we have 6 women signed to the company, and 4 of them right now, Franchon, Senicia, Marlene, 3 of them hold belts. Areli Muncino, who I send my condolence, her father just passed away a few days back, has been a world champion. I'm very confident she will be a world champion once again. Sulem Urbina will be, obviously just came off a very tough fight, but I think she was going to learn a lot from this fight and get back on the saddle and win a world title. So, it's a very good time, like you said. There's some very, very good fighters. I mean, obviously, Katie Taylor is one of the most exciting out there, and Clarissa Shields. I think it's a very good time all over the world, and they're doing very good. Now the playing field is getting more and more even. The fights are getting more interesting. There's some very good fights out there to make. I mean, one of the great ones, Serrano. I saw her live in Puerto Rico one day, and she's just amazing with that power and how she sets up her punches. So it's getting bigger and bigger, and I think fans are starting to open their eyes and giving them more of the respect that they obviously deserve.
Yeah, 100%. You've got some great women's fights for female champions. Obviously, you mentioned Katie Taylor, you mentioned Serrano, Jessica McCaskill as well, another great champion. You've got so many. It's great times for boxing. Great times for female boxing over here as well. You've got Terry Harper and Michaela Mayer in the US. So you've got women's boxing at the moment. It's very, very exciting times at the moment.
Absolutely, 100%.
But I want to ask you, obviously, you've been with Goldenboy, like you said earlier, for 14 years. I want to ask you, is there a fights that you want to get made but didn't materialize in your whole time with Goldenboy?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's quite a bit. I mean, sometimes you want to make a fight, but you get either a manager or trainer or even spouses or family members that, a father or the mother or somebody that, for whatever reason, no, we don't want that fight. It's not the time. Off the top of my head right now, I can't think of, a precise one, but there's been several. There's one fight that I made 3 times, and 3 times it fell apart. And I almost said, you know what, it's not meant to be, forget about it. I tried one more time, and the 4th time it almost canceled the week of on both sides. One had injured himself and then didn't tell me, but the fight went through, and it was Jesus Soto Caras against Yoshihiro Kamagai. By the 3rd time of it not happening, I said, you know what, it's not meant to be. But something told me, let's try one more time. And normally by the 3rd, it's over. I tried the 4th time, and it was an amazing fight. They both fought their heart out, and it was a draw. And we did it again. This time it went from a small network to HBO, and I was proud. I mean, obviously, it was a fight that I wanted to be done. I had this idea that it would have been a good fight, and I kept thinking, let's try again. And it was a fight that eventually, performed. They both performed higher than what I expected. So, but as far as fights that didn't materialize, Eric Morales maybe against Juan Manuel Marquez. It was a fight that was brought up by Eric Morales and turned down by Juan Manuel Marquez. And it was just a fight that I think, not only for just the Mexican fight fans, but worldwide, a fight that we missed out on. I think it wasn't really strongly talked about, but I think even right before they retired, Ricky Hatton against Miguel Cotto, that would have been a great fight, but it wasn't really, it had been mentioned, I guess, but not really gone into negotiating. So there's several, but it's just hard to think right now off the top of the bat which ones.
Yeah. Well, that's some cricket fight. I'm sure there have been legacy fights there, which unfortunately didn't get made, but they're all legends in their own right anyway. So yeah, that's how it is. I want to ask you obviously 2 more questions before I let you go, and that's a fighter that was originally under you guys when he first started boxing, and that was Deontay Wilder. He's fighting. Obviously, his last fight was scheduled to fight was against Tyson Fury in the trilogy. Obviously, Tyson Fury contracted COVID and wasn't being able to fight against Deontay Wilder. That fight's now being pushed to October. I want to ask you, can you really see Deontay Wilder getting revenge there and stopping Tyson Fury in the 3rd fight?
In the heavyweight, in any division, one punch can change everything, but in the heavyweight more so. I worked with Deontay Wilder for many years at Goldenboy, like you said, from pro debut till his world title win against Stubborn, 33 fights in all. I know Deontay power is 100% for real. He can knock anybody out, and that includes Tyson Fury. When he catches him, he can knock anybody out. Now, on the other hand, this is a man that shouldn't have gotten up in the 1st fight.
Yeah.
That says a lot about Tyson Fury. He's very special. He did a lot in the 1st fight to take away the right hand. Come the 2nd fight, I didn't think there was anything better that Tyson Fury could do. However, I knew there was more to what Deontay Wilder can do from what he did in the 1st fight. After the 2nd fight, I was in shock because if you're a boxer, you're gonna box. If you're a puncher, you're gonna go out there and be aggressive. And to see a fighter already as experienced as Tyson Fury is and be able to fight 2 different fights against the same opponent and change it up and shorten the distance, and instead of outboxing and moving and trying to counter, become the hunter, I was amazed because I've never been a Tyson Fury fan. Prior, I won't say prior to, I had never been a fan. I hadn't seen anything special. I'm like, yeah, he beat Klitschko. wow, he rose from the dead in the first knockdown because he shouldn't have got up in the first fight, he shouldn't have got up. But in the second fight, those adjustments, I mean, you got to be blind to not recognize this man's is definitely special. His mental strength is beyond, strong. I mean, he believes. It's going to be a good, exciting fight because when you have two heavyweights and one has revenge on his factor and one has that same one that has that revenge factor has the power to knock anybody out, it's going to be a very interesting, exciting to watch it unfold. I now have to have I have tremendous respect for Tyson Fury in his abilities of adjusting and changing and using that mental strength. Obviously, going into the third fight, he is the big favorite, and Deontay has to go in there and bring that title back to America, but has to be very intelligent, not just go out there looking for the knockout. He has to set it up. He has to work it. He has to use his skills, his talent, his jab, his movement, and then catch him and hope that we don't see another rise, because if he could catch him good, I think he could finish it, but he just has to catch him, and that's the difficult thing with Tyson Fury.
Yeah, 100%. I'm sure it's going to be a great fight either way once it does get made, and I'm sure it's going to be the final fight, hopefully, because we want to see the fight between Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury take place in the UK sometime next year, hopefully.
That's going to be big. Whoever wins this third fight, this third and final chapter against Anthony Joshua, I'm a big Anthony Joshua fan. That's the Super Bowl. That's the big one, and that's the one that I think everybody's waiting for.
100%, 100%. One last question before I let you go. And what is the short-term and long-term future? Short-term and long-term goal for yourself and Goldenboy?
You know what? To keep providing the fans with great fights. It's something when we're at the fights, the fans come up and sometimes mention fights they want to see. We'll continue trying to make those fights happen and invite the fans to, send their messages and keep supporting and keep building and keep making champions and keep giving the fight fans what they want. 50-50 fights, good fights, and exciting fights.
Brilliant. Roberto, absolute pleasure having you on. I really appreciate having your time, and I'm looking forward to seeing the next up-and-coming Goldenboy shows, and I wish you nothing but the best going forward.
Jermaine, thank you very much for having me on. Before we close out, I want to send all my love, all my condolence to the Eubanks family. Very sorry for the loss, and rest in peace and all the strength and love to the family.
Thank you. Yeah, we lost a very likable man in Sebastian Eubank. Very, very tragic news this week coming out in the boxing world. So also my condolences for the Eubank families. He's going to be missed. He's going to be missed. Roberto, absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you very much, and we'll speak again soon.
Cheers, pal. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Goodbye.